So, hello and welcome to the New Gig podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Hodgson, and today I'm delighted to be joined by future of work strategist, Dr. Alina Okun. How are you doing, Alina?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, Alina, give us a little bit of background about yourself. You've got skin in the game, to say the least, in terms of the future of work. And please tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about your background, what you're involved in, and some of the things that are coming up.
Yes, it's been a journey, that's for sure. Started in a very traditional way. The first 20 years, I had a very typical career. And but then it didn't feel quite right. And in 2019, I decided to leave what is a very comfortable life, what we are all accustomed to, and discover something new for myself. And so for the past 5 years, I've been very deep in research on the future of work. Um, I think it's very easy to criticize what's not working, but what I am interested in is what is the alternative? And that's, high level, this is what I have been focused on, finding this different nuances and different ways of thinking about the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are the sort of the main trends that you're seeing? I mean, you've been studying this for a few years, and a lot's been happening over those last 5 years as well, Alina. So, what are the kind of sort of points, trends, and elements that you're seeing, kind of joining the dots?
So it's interesting that you're saying that a lot has changed recently, and it is so true because I started this research before COVID. And and I'm continued through it, and I'm definitely very deep in it now. And one of the biggest changes that I'm noticing is just even how people react to my research. But early on, when I would talk about this, people would look at me like I had three heads. They had no idea what I was talking about and why I was even in this research. But now, when I talk about it, people are intrigued. People are nodding their heads. They're like, yes, let's find some answers.
Mm,
So that's one thing, just a change in people's reaction. I find that that's to be that has changed quite a bit. But in terms of the trends, um, just recently, like this morning, actually, I'm publishing an article based on 50 research reports that I have looked at, thousands of pages. And one nuance that I've noticed is a difference in cultures. So, uh, um, companies often say that they want people to come back to the office to preserve their culture. Um, the research is showing that microcultures are actually more impactful, and companies that have microcultures are doing better than the ones that have this monolithic
mm.
idea of a culture. So these are like just a couple of examples.
Mm. Very interesting. And the whole idea of microcultures in terms of an organization, is this kind of sort of more diversity, or what, how is it manifesting itself in terms of different teams having different approaches, being more inclusive to different skills, knowledge, and expertise? How's it playing out, Alina?
Yeah, so Deloitte actually has done this research. So this is coming from their report. And to be honest, I actually want to go deeper into it myself.
Okay.
But just high level, what they're saying is that it encourages innovation, that they're not saying that we should work in silos. They're just saying that different teams can have their own microcultures, and that is a good thing. Let's not push this big, vague, overarching idea of a culture, whatever that means. Let's allow for natural, microcosms within a bigger organization.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of makes a lot of sense. And you know, are you seeing differences? Talk about cultures as well, from sort of different geographies as well, different approaches to the future of work as well, based on the legacy and the national traditions that exist.
I love this question. Yes, I'm very big on international business and speaking with people from all over the world. And I'm part of a Future of Work network that is a lot of the members are from Brazil and South Africa. Then I talk to people in Europe, talk to people in India and all over. And there are definitely different flavors just based on the actual culture of the country and the family dynamics. And I think we have to keep that in mind. And so it's very easy to say future of work. I mean, it's very vague to begin with.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should look for one generic blanket answer and argue that that's a great way that it will apply to everyone. We need to be very sensitive to the national cultures and family cultures of each region.
Mm. And within this, Alina, as well, are we seeing sort of more sensitivity or more openness to the use of technology within the work style, lifestyle of today as well?
Yeah, we definitely cannot not mention AI and automation. And the interesting part is that automation was the reason I decided to leave my corporate life.
Mm.
I was in accounting, and if anyone knows anything about accounting, it tends to be very repetitive and very mundane in many ways. And that was the part that bothered me the most.
Mm.
I used to think that certain tasks that I was doing, I'm like, no human being should be doing this. This is a job of a robot.
Yes.
And that was before, robots actually started to take over. Um, and I love the idea of robotic process automation. That
Okay.
was kind of like pre-AI, being big. And I just thought that it was, a great idea. And then when I left my corporate world, that was the area of research that I started with. And so that is to say that, of course, technology is playing a massive role. And recently, I wrote a piece on work renaissance, and and I'm kind of comparing AI, what the potential AI had creating similar to what printing press did back in the day,
Yeah.
for spreading information and for allowing people from any background to have access to the type of knowledge that in the past was only accessible to a handful of people. So for sure, the technology is playing a massive role.
Yes. And how does it work as well? Because we have sort of the new technologies coming through, but also, traditionally technology kind of displaced people at the lower end of the skill spectrum. Today, we're seeing with the advent of AI actually replacing accountants, lawyers, computer programmers, people that we traditionally saw as more skilled. But how is this working when we're going to a level whereby knowledge is, if not free, then more accessible to absolutely everyone, and the need to add value in different ways is crucial for individuals in the workplace of today and tomorrow.
Well, I would like to believe that we're at the beginning of something much greater and that the technology is only going to elevate all of us.
Mm.
And I'm very optimistic about what is happening. Maybe in the immediate future, yes, it's probably going to be a little bit tough. I am actually more concerned about entry-level positions being
Okay.
eliminated versus, accountants and lawyers, who are more established,
Mm.
because that is already happening. Entry levels are on decline. The type of work that young people used to do early on in their careers, that is being replaced by AI. But in terms of professions in general, I don't think they're going to be replaced. They're going to be augmented.
Okay.
And again, I think that's a wonderful thing. Speaking from an accounting background, I think accountants can do so much more once their time gets freed up from the mundane stuff that they used to spend most of their time on. Yes, let AI do that, and then they can do higher level work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, and also I think as well, Alina, within this, that through the use of technology and the integration of technologies with individuals and working with the skill sets that we have, almost we're going to have new roles and new functions created out of this that we're not even aware of as we sit here discussing today.
I love where you're going with that because I have also studied the jobs of the future. And that's literally, people have spent now many years. Cognizant is an example of a company that had published several papers on back like in 2019 and 2020, I believe. Um, with different job roles that they thought that we would see in the future. And I remember seeing it the first time several years ago, and those jobs looked futuristic, like sounded futuristic. They're like, whoa, what does that mean? Now, if you look at those job descriptions, like they're almost here, and some of them all even exist. There was this another study with a university in Australia in the partnership with Ford, the company Ford. They have a database over 100 um, jobs of the future that also, when they probably published it, it seemed outlandish and crazy. And now if we look at it, it's like, yeah, I can see this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. The future is already here in a lot of cases. And what does this mean for us as individuals, Alina? How do we future proof ourselves in the future of today and the future of tomorrow in terms of how work will be? Where should we fo be focusing our time and efforts in terms of reskilling and upskilling?
So I think the concept of job security, even that phrase, is changing its meaning.
Mm,
And it's coming through in the research that a lot of companies are publishing these days. I think in the past, when someone would have said job security, that would have meant, okay, if I'm going to get a job at a company, I hope I can stay there, for years, maybe even decades, maybe even my entire life, if we go back a few generations.
yeah.
Now, job security means something a little bit different. Um, it's it's not even that it's upskilling. I think it's a very simplistic way. The upskilling it's too simplistic. It's really um, it's being open. I think at a minimum, you need to be open to the idea that things will constantly change and
Okay.
not being afraid of it. Um, it will probably be uncomfortable, but at least do not resist.
Mm,
I think the biggest challenge that a lot of people are facing right now is is this belief that, well, my education is done. I have a college degree, maybe I have a master's degree, maybe whatever it is, but I am done.
mm,
And now I'll just make the best of it, or the most of the type of education that I've acquired. Well, that that's old. That's gone. That's a sort of mindset you cannot have in the world that we're living right now and in the future.
mm,
So I think it's more of a mindset, more so than even upskilling. What specific skills should I have? Well, that will evolve. That will change. But if you're always on the lookout for trends, and if you're open to seeing what is happening, it's almost like opportunities will present themselves. You'll
okay.
get an answer as long as you're open to those opportunities.
So for us to all remain sort of flexible and able to pivot and shift with the realities around us, and not just stick on the same path that we've been following from the beginning. We need to be ready, willing, and able to see the opportunities and shift when we need it.
Beautifully said. Exactly.
And that's where we are today. And also, how does it look as an individual as well? How should we be positioning ourselves? I'm always interested in the issue of personal branding, and people talk about every individual in the future will need to have their own brand to build their portfolio careers, to be attractive to the market, but to be able to deliver value as well. Is this something we're seeing increasing more and more as time goes on?
For sure. But I also have a slightly different perspective on this.
Okay.
Um, I think a personal branding, that this whole concept comes from a marketing world, and now that since I come from a traditional corporate world, I think a lot of people are resistant to that idea.
Okay.
Because I think to them it almost sounds like you need to have some sort of a persona, some kind of sometimes it may not feel authentic.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and so I think people, and I experienced this myself. If you come from a traditional corporate environment, oftentimes you don't even know what your beliefs are. And it sounds a little strange, like what, you don't know what you think, but in some ways you don't because you've
Yeah.
been programmed to think in a certain way and you've been programmed to operate in a way. And so that you don't actually even know what your personal voice is, what is
Mm.
your personal perspective is. I found that the first several years after I left my corporate world, and especially since I do a lot of research and a lot of writing, I used to feel like anything I said, it had to be according to so and so, always an authority.
Yes.
Um, here's, a statement. Always cite your sources,
Mm.
and which is fine, but what happens is that many times, like, if you were to ask me, well, what is your opinion, um it was really hard for me to say that early on. And so my journey in building my personal brand or my personal voice has been um, pretty long, and I had to allow myself to experiment and to actually try to express what I thought, which felt extremely uncomfortable.
Mm.
But I think people have to kind of go through that journey in order to build that personal brand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because it is building a personal brand, but this lifestyle or work style is becoming more and more popular, despite the sort of the return to the office calls that we've seen of recent months. It seems to be more of a shift that's underway at the moment, Alina, that people are wanting to have more control, freedom, and flexibility over their lives and careers. But at the same time, we're seeing sort of corporations who are uh, if not going fully blended, they're having much more of a mixed approach. So a mixture of full-time employees, freelancers, contractors, temporary workers to be brought in on project as and when they can deliver value. So the whole paradigm seems to be shifting as we move forwards.
Yes, we're seeing a lot of, there's so much mixed, so many different things that we're seeing. Like we see extremes, and then we see a lot in the middle. We of course seen some companies that are almost rejecting everything that has happened in the past several years and kind of going back to the old ways.
Mm,
And then we're seeing some companies that have gone away from, from an office environment. They're very flexible. And they're
yeah.
kind of doing what you just described, and everything in the middle. And so it's kind of, it feels a little bit chaotic at the
Mm,
moment.
yeah.
But chaos introduces opportunities.
Yes.
And so I think people should kind of experiment and see their comfort level. Um, but the reality is that it's almost like we have no choice but to evolve.
Mm,
And this whole idea of one full-time job, one career path, I mean, it's on its last leg.
yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm not even sure that in 5 years if we're going to see that, or maybe in like very few professions, maybe hard sciences. Like there are going to be, it's going to be more of an exception than the rule.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and I think that the trends and the figures that we're seeing at the moment actually play that out and back up that kind of approach. And from the corporate side, who is best in your research and experience? Who's best plugged into the future of work? Who's doing this well? Who's getting kind of freelancer strategies or open talent strategies, looking at the fractional role opportunities, portfolio careers for individuals? Because, in a lot of countries, we're seeing sort of a shortage of talent. Companies and organizations can't fill the roles and the job openings that they have available. So, how and are there any best examples of companies and organizations who are already adapting their processes to make the changes and benefit from the trends that are underway?
It's hard to call out specific companies.
Yeah,
I will call out specific industries
yeah,
because I have done interviews with with industry leaders who are speaking to this. So, for example, data centers. I've recently done an interview with the leader in the industry, and she was saying that they have 300,000 job openings
wow.
that they're having a hard time filling.
Mm,
Previously, I spoke with someone in court reporting space, and she was saying the exact same thing.
mm,
Um, so it's not even about the companies. I wish our educational system would adjust a little bit more to this,
okay.
because we tend to push well-known professions, lawyers, doctors, accountants, engineers. That is all great. But there are other professions out there. Data centers. Like, how many people know that there are so many like good data center opportunities? And it's a very diverse and
Mm,
dynamic industry. And so I'm sure if people would look into it, they might find some interesting opportunities there for themselves.
yeah.
And so while companies like Deloitte, again, Deloitte seems to be doing a lot of research on the space, um, uh, I would look into some lesser known or less popular industries, and to see that, and they tend to be the ones who are more open to alternative um, work ways, working ways. And I'm actually about to do a lot more interviews with industries like that because I'm just
Yeah.
fascinated by that idea.
And do you think over time that it'll trickle through from sort of the more energetic, dynamic startups through to sort of the bigger corporations and even into the public sector to the government space, given the fullness of time?
I think so, and I think it's already happening.
Okay.
um uh, I think even large organizations are starting to adapt. Public space also. um so yeah, for sure, I'm very optimistic about that as well.
Excellent. So there's a lot happening at the moment, and it's a journey, not a destination, in terms of what's actually happening at the moment. And if you have to sort of get your crystal ball out based on your research so far, Lena, what do you say the main things that we should be looking for as we move into the next sort of 3 to 5 years?
Definitely stay open, um, to to alternative ways of thinking. Um, the whole idea of a job, for example, I'll give just I'll wrap up with this one other insight that came through the research that I just published,
Hmm.
that the idea of a job is disappearing.
Okay.
That we're now looking at it as a combination of different skill sets. And so that's what I would advise people to do, to stop looking at a financial analyst, I'm a marketing specialist, like kind of these labels that we're accustomed to, and start to actually think about your job or what you do as a portfolio of skills, and
Yeah.
start to identify which skills you enjoy doing more than others, and start to evolve that way. Because I think that's a much more enjoyable way to work. And this is also the way you can start to differentiate yourself, because you will have a unique mix of skills um, that will allow you to stand out. And coming back to your point about a personal brand,
Mm.
that will be your personal brand, this unique skill, unique mix of skills, experiences, and aspirations.
Excellent. Excellent. That's a great mix, and I think a great way to end this episode. I think that's sort of loud and clear for individuals what they should be sort of thinking about, and also a little bit about where we're headed. Because the future is unwritten. There's a lot of things happening, and the changes are happening quicker and quicker. But I think these basic tenets that we can actually take on board to future-proof ourselves and make sure that we are relevant, stay up to date, and can add value is absolutely crucial. And Alina, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and hearing your insights, and really want to be able to follow more and more the research that you're doing. We'll put a link in the description to your work, and be able to follow the journey from there onwards.
Thank you so much. It was a joy to speak with you.